Hello, welcome to the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast, where we are three newbies from Europe experiencing the show for the first, the second, and the upteenth time. This episode we are going to look at signs and portents, and as usual we start with our small introduction question, which this time around is, what is your craziest way you are likely going to die? Layla.
That I'm likely going to die, or that I wish I would die. That are two very different things.
Whichever of the two is the crazier one.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I would like to die doing something that I really, really love. Like, I don't know. I would like to, when I finally have the guts to go back on stage and do some poetry slam, I would like to get, like, I don't know, electrocuted by the microphone.
That would be a pretty good show.
Another thing, finally get to travel all the far places I want to travel to. Like, I don't know, when I travel to Mongolia, and then I have, like, I don't know, the Third World War explodes and my plane will crash somewhere over Russia. But I was on the way to my biggest adventure ever. I think that's a nice way.
Okay, and how is it with you, Meike? Also something you are going to love?
Well, technically, it would be my love who would crush me, because I'm pretty sure one of the craziest way I would die is being crushed by all my books. I mean, I just have, for the people looking at YouTube, you always see the rather small bookcase behind me, but there's another one standing at the other side of the room, and I really had to size my books down the last time we had to change apartments. But if I could have kept all of them or continue to keep all of them, I'm pretty sure I would have my own room of books. And I'm pretty sure that would be the closest and craziest way for me to die, being crushed just by them for tumbling down, because it's just too much for the bookcases to keep them holding up.
That sounds like it's less the craziest way and just inevitable. Sooner or later, the number of books is going to crush you. There's no way around it. I mean, for me, just very immediate. I get the feeling probably our black cat is going to be the death of me, because she's always very, very attention grabbing and wants to be close to you. But she's black and it's often dark, so I stumble across her like at least once a week in some horrible way. So sooner or later, I'm gonna break my neck doing that. I feel like, I don't know if that's the craziest thing, but it also seems kind of inevitable. Yes, we ask this kind of morbid question for a very good reason, because Signs and Portents is a pretty important episode to this season. You, Meike, might have not known this because you see the German titles where this doesn't work, but every season of Babylon 5 has a special title, and the title of season number 1 is Signs and Portents. So this is the title-giving episode that you just saw. And to go over our synopsis, visions of death and generally visions of a distant or not so distant tragic future are an important part, because Babylon 5 is visited by a Centauri prophetess of sorts, a seer, who has visions of both Babylon 5 being destroyed and her closest relative, Lord Kiro, being killed by shadows in some way. Quite ominous, and also one of the craziest ways you can die, I would assume. While this is going on, we have another visitor on Babylon 5. Mr. Morton is here, and he goes around selling people either toothpaste or asking certain questions. He for me always has this attitude of a salesman, but the pitch that he has is a simple question: what do you want? And he goes around to various ambassadors asking precisely that. While all of this is going on, the conflict between Babylon 5 and the Raiders is also coming ahead, as the Raiders are finally launching an actual assault on the station itself. So quite a lot of things going on here in this episode, and maybe let's start going around to our first impressions. As usual, this burden falls on Meike first.
Yes. Well, it was for me quite obvious in this episode where everything will be going. I mean, the very first rather obvious thing to me was when the seer it was, I think, her relative saying, yeah, she was wrong with her prophecies before. On my first birthday, she saw that I would be killed by shadows. And I don't know, this was kind of like the red shirt moment for me. Okay, you'll be dead at the end of this episode or something similar. And yeah, this modern guy who creepily asks everyone, what do you want? And at the second point, the second one is the Delen. The first was Jakar, then Delen, and then he goes for Lando, but there was this short appearance of Kosh, where he like was trying to hide himself, and there I was, okay, there's something rather shady going on, and there has to be more, especially since everyone like Lando and Jakar answered this question at some point, which kind of felt strange because they don't know him, they don't know who sent him, who he is, what he wants. And there's this point where both of them just click and tell Morden what they want in some dark way. Yeah, so
I would say not a great mystery episode, so to say. It's not a lot of detective work going on. Okay. It's a very interesting perspective. I feel like. How about you, Layla?
Yeah, I have to agree that this moment where Lord Kiro, is that his name?
Yeah.
Says this thing with, yeah, I mean, she's always wrong. She told me I was going to die through a shadow, and I'm like, yes, but you're not dead yet. That's always like my friend's father. What the hell?
There's still a lot of chance for you to die.
It's very easy to have confidence if it's not happened yet.
But yeah, I mean, actually, I would like to ask Meike a question before I start with my first impressions. I would like to know, do you think that Mr. Morden will come back? Do you think that is a character that we will see again?
The point is, since we don't know at this point what Morden actually is, and I hardly doubt that he is a human being, I think there will be some kind of reappearance. I mean, there's this ominous words from Morden to Lando. We will find you. Which, if I would have been in Lando's shoes, it would creep the hell out of me. Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's in the form of Morden, if he will look different or if he will be just this bodiless voice we heard at the end of the episode. Sort of a connection there, but not necessarily a reappearance in the literally there, I would presume.
Yes, I have to agree, because I remember that the first time I watched that episode, I felt like the show there opened up a lot of interesting topics and really like took a turn. Like I had a feeling of, okay, here it kind of found its direction, but I couldn't tell what it was yet. And yeah, I mean, it was not a big mystery episode. You were not really like invested in the plot, but you just saw a lot of a lot of things of how the universe worked. You saw them executed, which could get kind of interesting. And for me right now, when I rewatched that episode, it was like we still have these normal stories, this normal daily life on a place like Babylon 5, but you always get this pinch of mystery, this idea of something more mysterious or even mystical happening somewhere behind the scenes. And now and then in this episode, you have a moment where it comes through, and I really like to see that.
And yeah, from my side, my first impression, well, I don't really recall my very first impression, but with every rewatch, this feels very much like the moment where we are kind of playing in a sandbox. We have established Babylon 5 as a place, and we kind of know what daily lives look like there. And every single plot of this episode kind of feels like, let's just throw something weird in there and see what happens. Like, what will people answer if there's just a strange guy asking them what they really want? And this is kind of interesting because it gives me a little bit of insight into them. Or how will the station react if there's an actual attack leveled against it from the raiders? How does it cope with that? And yeah, I completely agree. This is not something where we have a lot of mystery to get invested in. It's more sort of this fun, let's see what happens kind of feeling for me every time. Okay, so from that, let's move a little bit into the main discussion. And we have quite a lot of big topics to go through. Maybe let's start with what is perhaps the most immediate or the most mysterious of all the plots, which is everything that comes along with Lady Ladira and sort of the state visit of Centauri coming and Lord Kiro's quest for the eye of the Centaurum.
Before we go to that, can we just appreciate the beginning of the episode? Because I really love this, how Ivanova wakes up and is like, oh gosh, I have to wake up. Why does my... and then her question, why does my mouth taste every morning like, I don't know, old carpet or something like that? And it was so relatable for me. It felt so realistic. And I really like this tidbit of daily life shown there, to make this episode a bit more established in the whole setting. I really love this.
That is really great.
The problem that it's so easy to identify with. I mean, I just, when I think of space travel, I always think of the problem of getting sick or of, and then it's like, yeah, okay, but when it's always dark, that's like something, I don't know, most people would have a big problem with. I really like that too.
And I mean, especially right now with the days getting shorter and everything, it's even more relatable because we get to this point right now of waking up in the dark, going out in the dark, working until it's dark again and coming home back when it's dark. So, maybe we are living in a space station right now.
You are in the middle of nowhere, it's always dark, it's always spinning, and you never can open a window for fresh air. It's like the perfect recipe for headache-inducing every day. Yeah, I completely agree. It's sets sort of the baseline also why everything is such a hard task for our heroes, because they kind of have always to deal with this level of stress.
Yeah, but back to the eye and the Centauri. I was really curious why it was called the eye, because if you look at it, it's just this ball-like structure with a lot of jewelry around it, and yeah, I kind of lost the connection to the name. It felt rather random. I would as a partly as art history person, I would like to know more about that. Please tell me why.
Also, we never really get to know what it was really used for, what its function was. We kind of only are introduced to it as a symbol, and it looked like it was like crafted so specifically for something, and that information is just not given to us.
Yes and no. I mean, if you look at what are the insignias of kings from our part of the world, it's like, yeah, you have this apple-like thing and a staff, which
the meaning is kind of better known. Like, why is
it is better known to us.
Yeah.
I mean, we grow up technically with it, and therefore it's more relatable to us, and therefore it's missing to ourselves if it's about others. So
I mean, there's really like this. I always felt like, I don't know, there was this lack of information. What I also found interesting, because always when the eye was shown, or when it was about the eye, the soundtrack tried to tell me that this is super mystical and super mysterious. The soundtrack was like space mystery always, and the dealing with it was mainly like political basically, and that was kind of like interesting what the characters were actually acting out and doing, and what the scenery and the soundtrack were trying to also kind of tell me. I felt like that was an interesting contrast.
I think it kind of has to walk this tightrope, right, where we have to kind of get the eye as a symbol, at the same time, obviously, you also don't want Londo to be there. Lord Kiro, here is the eye of the Centauri Republic, which, as you know, represents this and that, and is used for that and this. So I think it's great that you mentioned the soundtrack and stuff, kind of going into this, like, it's sort of generic royal kind of crown jewels of sorts. I'm also reminded, like, if you look at the great crowns of Germany or England or so, many of the individual stones in them also have like very poetic names that are maybe the source of something, like it's the eye because there's this one ruby in there that shines like the eye of a dragon and was probably also stolen from some colony, like you would probably expect.
Yes, and the characters, of course, have these background information, but we don't have it at the moment. That's why the soundtrack and the plot kind of leads so interestingly, I guess.
I have to admit, it's kind of interesting for me to hear you talking about the soundtrack, because I have to admit I completely turned it off the most of the time. It just comes, almost jumps at my face when there are these moments like dum. Like when the in the beginning when there's some guys are attacked from the raiders and the ship gets destroyed, and when they realize this on Babylon 5, and I think it was Sinclair and Ivanova looking at each other, and then there's this sound like dum. It's so cliche, parodic. I can't take this serious in this moment. So yeah, that's the moment where the soundtrack jumps at me. Otherwise, it's so much in the background for me.
Especially
first seasons used very, very weirdly in some moments. I have to agree. My favorite moment is always in the very first real episode where here our telepath, named Talia, wants to call Sinclair, and then you have but I don't know, I think I'm just in general a soundtrack enthusiast, and I watch out for it because, I feel like even when the show goes on later, the soundtrack really kind of narrates its own kind of thing in the background, definitely. So in the second watch, I can watch out for it much more.
There's also going to be much more of it, especially in the beginning. Like you say, there are these things that get reused fairly often, where you kind of feel like the budget of the show. So if you, Meike, don't hear that and mostly tune it out, good on you. I think that's exactly how it's supposed to go. Later on, there will be moments, I feel like, where it shines a little bit more, but especially in these early episodes, it is kind of moved towards the background. Coming back to the eye for a second, though, I really like what you said, Layla, that we get so much about the political implications and what it represents and such, because there is a real contrast, I think, between what the eye represents and what it is talked about as, and then when Londo in the end actually holds it in his hand, and it's just kind of this thing, this really tacky thing that is kind of, it looks a little bit cheap, but honestly, like, when we look at real, like, crown jewelry from medieval times, it also usually looks a little bit cheap because it's like a lot more imperfect and a lot more tacky, a lot more colorful than you would kind of envision in your typical, like, fantasy setting. Like, Aragorn's crown is a lot more regal than I think a lot of the real ones, just because it's designed to look cool, and our sensitivities aren't exactly those of the original royal times. So I feel like it feels very true to life, that it's this massive deal, but the item itself kind of looks It
looks like something my grandmother would put in her shelf. So I don't know, it reminds more of, I don't know, something like from the 18th century, probably, again, but that's because of everything the Centauri have kind of reminded of.
Yeah.
But I think this feeling of not feeling so well made is because now we have a completely different view on these things. Earlier it was like, oh my gosh, you have this special jewelry stone, the bigger the better, and therefore you were trying to cut it the least possible, and especially the mechanical, the what's called, damn it,
manufacturing process, or?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. The manufacturing process is so different back there and now. I mean, there were really awesome things if you really look into it. But I think the majority was rather, or would feel rather clumsy from our actual point of view right now.
Yeah, that is obviously like sensitivities and perspectives having changed quite a lot there. If we have anything more about the eye, otherwise I would move on to Lord Kiro.
I would like to say something about the hair design of the Centauri, because I really liked to see that the bodyguards, I think, of this the Centauri group, they had like rather short hair, even though they were trying to put it up in some way, but it wasn't this Dracula-like style we have with Lando or now with Kiro. So maybe, that's also some sign of status there, that if you are, the higher up you are, the longer your hair, the longer, more it stands up or something like that, or maybe it's an age thing. I'm not really sure, but I really like to see this differentiation, because up until now, I think we always had this, standing hair style with the Centauri, with the male at least. The female tended to have this half-shaved head just with the ponytail. Now we have this woman with no hair at all.
I mean, it wouldn't be that far-fetched to imagine, you have this 18th century society, your hair length indicates your social status and influence, and then the woman ends up having no hair. I could see how that might happen to Centauri society, let's say. But that being said, like obviously Lady Ladira also has like a very important position that is kind of set parallel to sort of the political structures that the Centauri have. But no, it's great to see that sort of the design is branching out here a little bit. And Lord Kiro, I completely agree that he feels like the red short of the episode as soon as he mentions the prophecy of his death. That being said, I feel like even if the prophecy had been that he lives a very long and happy life, my confidence in him surviving this episode wouldn't have been that higher. So it was kind of, from the very beginning, it feels like his plan to regain the eye and just with the symbol single-handedly take control of the Centauri Republic, it feels doomed to fail. And once he starts explaining it to Londo, I think we kind of get this confirmation that this guy just was never on a really winning streak, I feel like. I don't know how your impressions there were.
Yeah, he felt a bit out of reality. Like he had this dream. He didn't like the situation with the Centauri, with their king and everything. But instead of trying to make a real change, he was just trying to follow some sort of dreamy thing he was trying to accomplish that was so far off reality and even possible to get through with. It was like, okay, this red shirt with a bit of crazy feeling there.
And for you, Layla?
I don't have something that specific on him, actually. I also didn't consider him to be a very long living. So I don't know. He doesn't have that much space in my head, actually.
Doesn't he feel a little bit like a reflection of Londo, though? At least for me, this is sort of the go-to idea. We know that Londo has this longing for the glorious past, this longing for returning the Centauri to this greater, as a lion of the galaxy, as he says. But I feel like this is for an illustration for us that Londo still has a basis in reality. He wants all these things, but he is pragmatic enough to say, well, but I can't be King Arthur and pull like this mythical sword out of the stone and become king of everything. He is kind of more melancholic because he kind of accepts the fact in reality it's probably not going to be great again like that. and Lord Kiro just feels like he has gone one step further and gone off the deep end because of that, because his desire to return to the old ways is so strong that he kind of loses this connection to reality.
Yeah, but even though Lando is always saying, I want things to be like they were before, I think he still has the sense of realizing that it wouldn't work. That even if you would put everything back to how it was, that it wouldn't play out. And therefore, he knows the past is gone. Deep down, he knows that. At least that's how it feels for me.
I think, yeah, there is kind of this understanding also, there is a reason why things aren't the way they were back in the day. What happened back in the day wasn't that successful, right? The old way of the Emperors of Centaurian stuff ended or is supplanted by the Centaurum, kind of because times change, because the Republic has changed, and on some level at least he realizes that. So given that the plot isn't going to work out for Lord Kiro, he is then sort of revealed to be in league with the Raiders, and this is the first time we kind of get a closer look at the Raiders. So let's maybe shift slowly in that direction, that side of the plot. We learn a lot more about how the Raiders operate, and then, yeah, the fact that the glorious Centauri Republic has resorted to dealing with the Raiders on a pretty big scale to get back this eye and to transport it back to be part of this plot.
I'm not really sure. Maybe I just didn't get it, but wasn't it just Kiro acting with the Raiders and playing all this, and the Republic just trying to get this random person we see at the beginning who brings the eye? I didn't really see the I see the connection between Kiro and the Raiders, but I don't see the connection between the Republic and the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, to be more precise, that's correct. We have Lord Kiro as a representative of one of the old houses of the Republic, I guess, dealing with the Raiders. You're right, but I think it's Londo who mentions, still this kind of shame of, we had to pay a human merchant to get this back. It's not really the Republic that gets it back. It's more they spend a lot of money to do it, which, once again feels very fitting to them. But you can see how this will also have to be spun in a certain way to fit the glorified narrative, right?
On the other hand, it feels rather realistic. I don't know how the situation is around now with art objects, historical objects, getting back to their original owners, but usually it's more like this: you have to pay for it to get it back. There are quite rare situations where a war stuff is brought back to their people who belonged it.
I think that's completely true, and it's interesting to draw this parallel to real life, because obviously the Centauri stand sort of on both sides of this, right? Like they are probably responsible for a lot of art being removed from all kinds of places, but at the same time, the Narn have sort of retaliated in kind, at least in certain places, and managed to get their hands on some pretty important things. So that is sort of the Londo Centauri side up to this point. We learn a little bit about the Raiders in this episode and how they operate, how their operation has been sort of a recurring factor. And I'm kind of curious how both of you feel about the Raiders up to this point, because I remember when I first watched the show, the Raiders felt kind of like a big deal. I always look back at the first season and it feels like, there is this whole long campaign where the Raiders are constantly harassing the station. But on every rewatch, I'm also reminded it's not actually that many scenes where we get to see these interactions. There are not that much here, but it's still interesting because obviously the Raiders are the typical sci-fi trope of space pirates, which we often sort of see glorified. It's Pirates of the Caribbean, but in space, and they are like glorious buccaneers that go treasure hunting and such. And in this episode, they are portrayed in this much more mundane way where well, they're kind of criminals, and you can give them money and they will do things, and they kind of rely on bureaucracy mess-ups in companies to get like information to take people hostage. They are much more akin to real-life modern-day pirates than sort of this adventurous type that you usually think of.
I honestly never really found them interesting. I always felt like they were just kind of a filler to kind of get more of an impression of what a space station as such has to deal with in their daily life. Like for me, that always looked like, I don't know, like, yeah, okay, the police probably has to deal with smuggling, but it's not interesting for me. That's always how I felt towards the Raiders. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Like, it's completely valid, especially the only times we deal with them, right, is if they are sort of a vehicle for other parties to do things. Like the Raiders, even in this episode, aren't that important if it weren't for Lord Kiro sort of working together with them.
Yeah, I have to agree on that. Up until now, it feels more like Babylon 5 is trying to swat away some annoying flies that are disturbing their routines. I think it's also this way because there's no emotional connection or some relevance to the things that got destroyed or stolen until now. There was not like, oh my gosh, there's very important equipment was robbed because the Raiders got some transport ship and now we have the problem, we can't repair docking bay. And that didn't happen until now. So yeah, they are there, they are annoying, but they don't feel necessarily like a threat because there wasn't a real impact to see until now. And I mean, even in this episode, like you said, they're just more like a appearance at the periphery here, just to give Kiro and the phantoms or the shadows some sort of connection to all of this, like having a platform to perform for them.
Yeah, and I mean this even goes so far that the station is surprised that the Raiders managed to have as big as a ship as we see in this episode. There's always a sense of they weren't supposed to be this successful. They don't have enough money to do this. There must be somebody behind that. And I mean, it's good news for both of you. Then I guess that in this episode we deal with the Raiders, right? Like their fighters get destroyed. Their ship is gone by the end of it. We know so. At least for the foreseeable future, I guess we can expect that they are going to be even more peripheral of a problem, if at all.
And I mean, even we get the informations that just one person of the two wings going out there, just one person died and one is in recovery. So they didn't have an impact on them too. Though I really liked to see Ivanova in action. That was nice to see again.
In general, like she has been getting most of her like flight hours going against the Raiders, so good on them for that. But I mean, yeah, this once again reflects also this fact that they aren't really like an existential threat to the station, right? Like this is much more akin to anti-criminal operations that Coast Guard has to undertake, which is dangerous and important and everything, but it's not a war. You are not really, out there expecting many casualties or something like that. Okay, but if we have them as sort of this thing, the final thing I guess we can ask about them is what sort of is the motivation behind that, right? Like what is wrong in this universe that people resort to this kind of thing? Because it's obviously very easy to have sort of the adventurer type. Pirates exist because either some people are just plain evil or people seek adventure out there. And I'm just sort of making a connection here to past discussions we had about how Babylon 5 isn't exactly the most hunky-dory, happy utopian sci-fi universe. There are reasons why we have even modern-day piracy, and it's usually because you have like extremely disadvantaged like places where that's kind of the only economy that exists. So maybe it's also just one more hint that Earth Alliance is maybe happier to have the raiders around and kind of swat at them every so often when they get annoying, instead of maybe addressing the underlying issues that cause piracy to exist in the first place.
But it's always like this with everything. You rather take care of symptoms than the problem, because the real problem, to get to the core of this, is always connected with a lot of work, a lot of money, and usually people don't want to handle it, or in specific politics don't want to handle it, because it usually results in a really dry time where people have to cut down on things and everything, and that's not how you got reelected.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it just re-emphasizes the fact also how important it is that Santiago tried to have like a visit on the station and stuff in the past, because usually that's probably not the most important thing and not the most popular thing to deal with these deep space sort of issues. I think from here we can like move on sort of to the ending stage of what happens to Lord Kiro, and then get to the actual meat of the episode, which is Mr. Morton's visit.
But maybe about the big ship of the raiders. It was quite interesting to see that they one of them said they like had to save money for like 5 years to build this thing, which means, well, they were not that successful if it took them 5 years to get enough money to. I mean, okay, there's a lot of things you have to pay. The people need to eat. They need medical attention. The raider ships, the smaller ones, they have to maintain them or rebuild them if destroyed. But still 5 years, considering how frequently they appear, even if it's just in the periphery, is quite a long time.
Yeah, it really tells us that, or it tells us on one hand how big of a deal a ship of this size is. Just, it's a huge investment that you need to make. And also, the civilians can't easily do this, even if you have a bunch of criminals working together for a very long time. I guess maybe it's the equivalent of the mafia trying to buy a container vessel, right? Like it's not easily done, even with their resources.
Yeah, and also it says about the raiders, they have a rather long breath. I mean, to constantly get this money together and don't just spend it all the time on other things. I mean, it's hard enough to do it in private, but if you have a collection of people throwing their money together, it's getting even harder.
Especially if these people are the kinds of people that would join up with the raiders, right? Like there's definitely some organization going on here. And I mean, maybe this also speaks to the fact that this is why they are also able to engage with somebody like Lord Kiro or the Nan regime earlier on in this season. They are at least organized enough to kind of get these sort of bigger weapons deals done and accumulate money that way. So we talked about now the importance, the creation of the raider vessel, and unfortunately it meets a rather untimely end at the end of this episode. So maybe let's talk quickly or briefly about this ending scene, about sort of the impression this created, before we then loop back to the side of maybe the perpetrators behind this. Because we know there is a double crossing and a double crossing going on among the raiders and Lord Kiro, but none of that really matters, because within a single shot they get blown up by something. And maybe let's talk about what that something is, what it looked like, what your first impression on this was. This is a important episode, so I guess we are going to have many of these moments where I ask for people's first impressions and so, because it's just lots of new things that we get to see.
Well, I have to say, when it appeared, I had to think about, from its shape, it felt like an octopus or a kraken or something like that. Maybe it's just because I'm rewatching Sanctuary right now, and there was an episode with a vampiric octopus, but the shape and everything really felt like something in that direction to me.
I can definitely see that, especially with like the long sort of appendages. It's kind of like tentacles and such going on. Just fits in the pirate theme of the Raiders as well. So it's all nicely connected.
Yeah, well, the Kraken destroys the ship.
Yeah, as always.
Well, I'm still waiting then on Captain Ahab and Moby Dick.
Maybe one of our pilots or maybe Sinclair is going to become obsessed with hunting this thing down. Although, I mean, up to this point, obviously, apart from us, nobody knows about it. Any big impressions from you, Layla?
Actually, not so much I can say without spoiling something for later. So, I mean, when I first watched it, it was just like, oh, space mystery. And I also kind of felt like, I mean, sometimes you have these stories where you feel like someone is getting away with something evil, something illegal, and then just a big coincidence in the universe fights back, and the person's not getting away with me or whatever. And, you know, the people that have a sense of justice then are very, very much comforted by this kind of story. And this was a bit like, a leap of faith in that direction, I would say. More I cannot say, because what I can say at this point is definitely that I would like to discuss how the plot in this episode were structured at a later point when we know more about the general world building.
Okay, but I like this idea of the question is this a manifestation of cosmic justice being exacted out there? That's a really cool tale. Would also fit the whole prophecy aspect of it, right? Like, she foresees this divine judgment that is cast upon this guy that wanted to become an emperor, essentially. We could
the short version of Karma Bitch.
Yes. Yeah, see, I was going for Greek tragedy, but I mean, that is also valid, yes. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit, because obviously the ship is gone, Lord Kiro is gone, the Raiders are gone, the Eye of the Centauri Republic is not gone. It appears again in the hands of our favorite new character, or at least one of mine for this episode, this bad guy or mystery guy of the week, so to say. But of course we see him under much more mundane circumstances when he first arrives. And Meike, I don't understand why you would question whether or not he's human, because the digital thing that he was scanned with by security said it was all fine. He just was kind of not registered in the registry anymore. So do you buy into his backstory, or are you suspicious?
I'm very suspicious. I mean, come on, how often some technical stuff malfunctions and something is not seen by some scans? The oldest story in the book, or one of the oldest stories in the book. Not impressed. Sorry. 3 out of 10 points.
I always have this fear when I go to when I have to deal with bureaucracy, like when I have to get a new ID or a new passport. I always feel like that they type in who I am, and then just computer says, no, you never exist, and then we have a big problem. That's like my deepest fear whenever I have to organize something.
Or if something starts getting mixed up. I mean, I don't know for how long, and I think it was the first apartment I had together with my partner. I don't know for how long the post to him, the what's it called? The mail. Sorry, the mail addressed to him was addressed to Mrs. And I was, is there something you're not telling me? Do they know more than me? And I mean, it's so quickly that something gets mixed up. Like, I don't know, your name or your, I don't know, your age. I mean, in the passport, there's written like how big you are, what eye color do you have, and yeah, I mean, it
easily gets messed up. But I really enjoyed that you gave him a rating of 3 out of 10, because I completely agree. It's the oldest trick in the book and not convincing at all. At the same time, I feel like Mr. Morden has this grin that just tells you he knows. He just doesn't care, because he's still going to get away with it. And I think this is like the biggest reason I'm so drawn to this character here. I absolutely love the way he portrays himself. He has such a slimy kind of used car salesman disposition about him that is just immediately screaming to me, that guy is not up to no good. There's something wrong about what he's doing.
Yeah, well, I have to say, when I heard his name, I was like, okay, this sounds like some fucked up version of a Tolkien character. I don't know. This just shouts at me, I come from Mordor and I will conquer Middle Earth and I will slay every free person on the planet, something like that. And his how he deals himself, that just fits in to me perfectly. Though I was really happy when he was finally facing Kosh. It was like, oh my god, my troll is back.
It is true that this is the only time we see a crack in his kind of character, in his kind of theme, and Kosh doesn't even really have to say anything for that to happen. He's just strolling along, and Mr. Mord knows, I can't mess with that.
Yeah, and then he has to face Kosh because for some reason Kosh knows he's there and faces him. And it was really interesting for me to see that later we get the information that somehow Morden must have managed to get a bit of the suit of Kosh destroyed. It was like, oh my god, did we miss? The most interesting part of this episode wasn't shown.
I mean, this is the part where, at least for me, it's kind of the confirmation. This guy is not a regular, like, tourist that comes here from the Rim, because you can't do that with a Vorlon. Much less you also can't do that with a Vorlon without the Vorlon fleet showing up. Like, the last time Sinclair thought about opening Kosh's suit up, there was pretty much a declaration of war on the table. So this is not normal. This is not a normal occurrence that's happening here.
And I mean, Kosh is even playing it down.
Yeah.
He is not saying what happened, but he's just, I need something to fix my suit.
Yeah, it is definitely like the shortest interaction we see between Morden and somebody else, but definitely a fairly important one in terms of what it tells us about what's going on here. I can completely buy into that. And maybe we kind of go through these. What is the next earlier or later interaction between Mr. Morden and somebody that you would like to talk about? Because I think all of them are pretty interesting.
Yes, all of them are pretty interesting. So I thought maybe we could just walk through them chronologically. We could maybe start with Carr, Delenn, and Rondo, then in the end. Because I was also thinking a little bit about the production decisions in general on how Mr. Morden and his question is introduced, because I feel like it could have been a bit more mythical, maybe. I don't know. I feel like the idea is totally great, and here I was totally hinged the first time and interested in the universe, and but I still feel like the way he talks, the way he speaks, the way he makes conversation with people, I always felt like
it's too mundane. It doesn't have that much impact.
I mean, maybe it's also from the writers and producers, it's a wanted comment that we have the feeling that there's just a super capitalistic person, just really like a salesman who's coming to you and trying to make a deal with you or whatever, or trying to know you or how he can do you a favor for the future. Maybe that is wanted, but I always felt like they could have, I don't know, persuaded a bit more with these scenes than they did. Like, they are totally cool, but there was more potential in it.
It's very interesting because I definitely see the same thing, right? He's very mundane. This is why I'm joking. He looks like he's trying to sell me toothpaste. He looks on the one hand very convincingly human, very mundane, very simple. But personally, I'm a very big fan of this exact portrayal here, because it feels almost like he has this disguise, and every so often it kind of cracks. He walks around in his human suit or with his human persona, but then he encounters Kosh and dents Kosh. And that is just something that doesn't click. Or he stands in the hallway and suddenly there's shadow cast over him in a certain way. He has conversations with all these people, and we can talk about those in detail later on. And just in the middle of the conversation, the switch is flipped and suddenly they start talking to him exactly like he wants them to. And in all of these instances, it's not quite enough to definitively say there is something bigger going on, but they keep adding up and it's just somewhat off. And I'm not really left with a really cool portrayal of a bad guy, but just sort of this oddity.
But kind of now that you put it that way, that we are introduced to this person that looks human, completely is accepted as a human by the scanner, and then really acts like a businessman or something, like a very cool and relaxed and experienced businessman that deals with politicians. And then kind of has all of these cracks because he is more like a shadow of it, or like a idea, like a concept of it. And at every corner, it doesn't really work out. That is kind of cool, actually. Now, yeah, this view on that I like a lot.
Convinced. But I totally see where it's coming from, where I can also completely imagine this version of the episode where they lean much more into this like mythical element for him, right? And that could also be really, really interesting. How about your insight there? Which kind of bad guy do you prefer, Meike?
Well, I really like the overall idea. I just don't like how it's portrayed. Because the problem is, for me, I can't really decide if it's, just badly made. I don't know. There's something missing just for me. I would rather say either go more into the mythical way or go more in the direction of there's nothing here to see, and then immediately crack.
Yeah.
But the way it was made here, there's something I can't really put my finger on it, but there's something that just doesn't make it work for me. So I would say, go more in this direction or then in the other one, but not how it's done here, because it's not like a big reveal to me, or the guy is not really creepy in a sense to me. It's just like, okay.
Maybe we see here the result of very long and painful meetings of producers, of writers, of their money givers, and we see the result that everyone accepted, but no one liked.
That is very possible, especially this early on in the show. And I mean, Meike, your reaction here is, I think, very typical for first comers to the show, because Layla, to some extent, and definitely on my end, we always have this thing. We've seen the show a bunch of times. We know we really like it. So we are very quick to give the show a lot of benefit of the doubt, right? We have a lot of confidence in the writing because we know where it's leading. And so if we see something like this, it's easy for us to say, surely there is a big plan behind this. Surely we can assume this is that way because it was intended this way, and definitely not because there was a bunch of committee meetings that went wrong. But from the production side, this is definitely still this era where JMS, the creator, is trying to write a show, and he has a very clear vision, but then he's also trying to sell the show to a studio, which is giving notes. And these notes sometimes get in the way, or realities of production get in the way, or somebody is directing an episode that maybe doesn't quite get the vision that originally was there. So if we look at the credits for all of these episodes, you see that in the beginning, in the first 1 or 2 seasons, there's a lot more variety, and then you kind of notice that the creator of the show starts selecting the people that he enjoys working with, and others kind of disappear. And that as that happens, the vision of the show becomes a lot more coherent, a lot more linear. So,
I mean, there's unfortunately a lot of series that are going that way. If I think of Doctor Who, when they first remade it, at least the first season was rather, it felt cheap in a lot of ways. I mean, they were trying to capture everything from the previous ones, but it felt cheap. It felt off. It wasn't like, it was like, okay, come on, we do it a bit on the side way, not, it didn't feel like it was proper made.
Yeah.
On that note, I should say I really love Doctor Who, so I can do both. I can really like something, but I can still rant about how bad it is. So please don't put me there.
This is why we just said the special about Event Horizon, right? Like we did basically that for 2 hours in there.
Yeah.
And no, for us, this is really important because obviously this is the perspective that we really need from you, right? Like talk about this experience, because otherwise we just sit here and say, just wait, it will get good. And, you know, that's not a good way to enjoy the early seasons of a show like this. So it's always great to hear sort of how well does it stand on its own and how well it sometimes doesn't. Okay, let's definitely do this as a separate thing then. Was there anything more about the production side or the presentation of the whole Mordens angle? Because if not, then this is a good opportunity to start talking about the actual contents of the conversations that he has.
Yeah, well, the first one with the Jakar, after he is asked several times, what is it that you want? And giving nice answers. I really like the one with, what do you want for me to answer? What do I want for dinner, for this evening? I really like this one. Until he gets to the point where he starts talking what he really wants, like his deep down, darkest, deepest desire. I would rephrase it about the Narns destroying the Centauri Republic until the point of salting their fields and killing everyone and everything. I think that adds it up. I mean, he's doing it way more equivalent than I am doing right now, but I think it would be too much to repeat it completely here.
I would enjoy a dramatic reading, but I mean, whenever Jakar says anything, that is something that we would enjoy to reenact.
And, well, we have to face it, we wouldn't be able to replace him anyway, so we just skip that.
Unfortunately, that is absolutely correct. And yeah, this is a very good summary. Was this a surprise at any point, or was this very much in line? Because at least for me, this feels like the essence of Jakar right there. Like we heard him talk before about making flutes of the bones of the last Centauri for Narn children to play with. Like there's definitely this darkness in there, but also everything that comes before, this sort of much more jovial way he kind of dodges the question around is really, really fun. Although I think it is kind of this confirmation that we've been talking in recent episodes about this rivalry, almost kind of playful rivalry that Londo and Jakar have. And I feel like this is the moment where it really rings through. Yeah, but at the heart of it, Jakar is serious about this. He wants the Centauri Republic destroyed. He wants the Centauri to be as gone from the universe as possible as this kind of revenge. Or do you see this differently, Layla?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I had written down as a discussion question, which is probably not possible to completely answer with yes or no, that I'd written down, is he 100% serious? Like, is that really something where he would sit down satisfied, like, all my goals are reached when we have wiped out the Centauri? Because I feel like the question of, what do you want? If you could have anything you wanted, what would you really want? That is such a weird and abstract question, and he's still so heated up by the argument he had right before, or feel relatively close before, with Londo, that I feel like this is just a snap overreaction of he has this thought in his head and he like completely plays it into the extreme of, okay, you asked me here, you have your answer, because he's annoyed and because, but I don't know, it's up for discussion how serious that is, or how he just plays into the scenario out of an emotional reaction because he's annoyed, because he had a long day, because Londo is fucking annoying. Like,
well, I said earlier his darkest, deepest, darkest desire, and I mean, okay, we don't have Delen's answer, but maybe this dark part is just the bigger thing here. I mean, it's like we all have this moments where everything is bad. where I don't know, where someone is saying something, you don't even know this person, and you're like, oh, I want to kill you. And 5 minutes later, why was I so agitated? Yeah. So maybe this is, like some triggered, really dark, depressing moment there, because I mean, there's especially, I think it was Jakar is asked, and if everything happens like what you said right now, then what? And he is like, basically, I don't know. So
and it's interesting because that last moment is, for me, what convinces me that he's totally serious about this, although I can completely see how it might be interpreted as the more gut reaction, agitated reaction due to the circumstance. But I kind of read this last moment as he has this heated reaction, and then Mr. Morden kind of goes one step further and says, okay, and what comes next after that? And Jakar has this sort of quiet moment of reflection. Okay, what does come next? And it's sort of this, honestly, doesn't matter. It's not only just that he doesn't know what he wants after that, it's actually kind of not important anymore what he wants after that point, as long, and he specifies this, as long as the security of his people is guaranteed. And I feel like this was kind of this, he has this agitated reaction at first, and then this quiet moment of reflection, and he doesn't really change his answer in that moment. He doesn't kind of go, oh God, I of course not seriously, right? So this is kind of where I would see it, although, it's open for debate, definitely.
Yeah, you didn't see like doubt in his eyes there or anything. There was nothing in that moment that made you doubt it, but also he was kind of
absolutely
conversation. And I feel like this emptiness that came afterward, this and what then, and that, like, not having an answer to that, it definitely kind of showed how this biggest desire also kind of ran into a kind of insecurity or uncertainty there. But what we could maybe agree on, and that will be important, I don't want to spoil something, but that is something that we will talk about again at some point, let's put it that way. We don't have Jakar running around telling everyone you want to commit genocide in general. Like, that's not really, he has those dark sides, he fights the Centauri, but that's not something we see him doing a lot. And suddenly Mr. Morden arrives and just really triggers this side of him, and we can take a note that he comes from this world that has been so much terrorized by the Centauri and whatever. So he definitely has this aspect inside, and something about Mr. Morden that come out and come forward. And that's maybe something to keep in mind. We see a lot of different sides of him, and that is also a side that is there, and he can trigger it, and it comes out and it takes over.
I think that is definitely an important point, and I would like to actually formulate that into a question for all of us. How do we feel about this triggering process? Because I can totally see that it feels almost supernatural, the way that Morden just repeats his question and gets an answer every single time, or almost every time. But at the same time, it also feels a little bit like an interrogation technique of just this simple question repeated and basically methodically peeling through the layers of sarcasm and masks and defenses until you get to the truth. And so maybe we can consider this. Like, does this feel like Mr. Morden is using maybe some kind of telepathy? We know this exists in this universe, so it wouldn't be crazy to imagine that there's some sort of suggestion going on. Or is this really just him sort of finding this spot and poking at it until he gets the right answer?
I feel like for finding the spot and poking at it, he did not work hard enough. Okay, we also didn't have hours for one scene. That is also something to have in mind, but
it goes too easy for that.
Yes, and they are ambassadors. They are aware that they are like public figures and of much importance. So I feel like if you annoy them, they would probably like give you a very extravagant drink order or something, and not their biggest wish of wiping someone out. I feel like it had to be supernatural, otherwise they are very
okay.
Yeah, and both of them could have gone at any point. They're like, fuck off, leave me alone, and then leave, go somewhere else, or just, I mean, I think he was he in Jakar's room? I'm not sure, but even if that was the case, you could throw him out.
Absolutely.
You don't have to answer him. And since it was also easily that he got his answers, I would say there's certainly something more going on than just some psychological questioning and hitting the right point.
I can totally buy into this. And the second conversation he has, if I remember correctly, is with Dylan, right? Yeah. Which is good, because this also gives us another hint that there are more things going on, because Dylan is an ambassador. She speaks to a lot of people. She isn't very prone to losing her composure, and her forehead doesn't glow every day. So once again, something is unusual here. So maybe let's talk about this interaction a little bit, because he doesn't really get a straight answer out of her, but we get a reaction which is nonetheless very telling, and it is, at least I would read this as fairly terrified.
Yes, and she recognizes him. I mean, sadly, I haven't written down her exact choice of words. She says they're here or they have arrived, and
though I have to say, I'm not sure. I wouldn't say she was terrified. It felt more like she's unsettled about it. She doesn't like it, but not like, terrified, scared or anything. Just, damn, something will come.
I mean, definitely we talked about Jakar and Londo having the ability to send him away. She's the only one that actually utilizes that ability, right? She is unsettled, I think, is the best choice of words, because she's not terrified to the point of she can't do anything about it. She just very quickly sends him away. I think there is a certain sense of urgency about that, right? She needs to get him away, maybe because she has the sense he has something supernatural about him that could make her actually give an answer or something to that effect. But she has kind of the awareness and power to just say no and get out of him. And that seems to be something that, maybe is intrinsic to the Minbari themselves, as something biological or so, because she has this glowing unicorn forehead, which then obviously begs the question, how does she know him, or whatever he is? I think it's one more hint that he's not a normal human, right? Because why would she know somebody like that? So he seems to represent something other than that. And presumably something the Minbari have dealt with before.
Though I'm not sorry.
And I just wanted to add that her quick reaction of throwing him out also kind of shows that maybe she would also have a part that would give like a gloomy, dark, or terrifying answer to this ultimate question that he asked. But it's definitely one that is not strong and not as easy to get out of hiding than in like Jakar, for example.
That's very fitting, because we know the Minbari are capable of wanting something as extreme as Jakar describes, right? They had the Minbari Earth War. They were on the verge of basically bombarding Earth back into the Stone Age. So it makes sense that she can definitely have this darker side there, and she's obviously like very strong in controlling that.
What I'm not sure about is if she is recognizing Morden as source or whatever, or if it's more like the bigger thing behind him that she realizes at this moment, because maybe she's just too composed to react the way I would react. But if there's some creepy person at me and I would realize, oh my gosh, this is some dangerous or whatever person, the normal reaction would, you look at this person because you don't want to leave that one out of your sight. But she's quite, slowly, she's holding her unicorn head and this realization moment that you have with reflecting in her eyes. She's not turning around quickly, but rather, composed, slowly, So I'm not sure if it's really directed at Morden himself or the bigger thing he's representing.
I think it's an interesting question. I would lean more towards the bigger thing he's representing, just in the way she phrases it. And it also hints to me at the fact that she must sort of understand kind of the power dynamics here, because it's notable that obviously Morden could probably force her to give an answer, right? If he can dent Kosh's suit, he probably has some kind of powers that could be very dangerous to her, even just on this physical level of if he wanted to harm her in this moment, he probably could, and he doesn't. And maybe this is something that she understands more than we do, which is why she's able to not constantly look at him, because at least on some level she understands he's not a physical threat in this moment or so.
Or maybe eyesight has something to do with giving an answer. Who knows?
I mean, it would make a lot of sense, because a lot of telepathy has kind of this idea you need to see somebody, eyes are the mirror to the soul and all that kind of stuff. So that definitely would symbolically at least make a lot of sense. Okay.
But, well, there are far too many ifs and maybes in there to make a proper statement.
That's the mystery part where we just can't really, within the scope of this episode, get to it, right? Next, I think, would be Kosh, right? We talked about him.
Yeah.
Before we go to Londo, and at first glance, it's a very similar reaction that we have between Mr. Morden and Londo and Mr. Morden and Jakar, right?
Yeah, it feels rather similar, especially his first reactions and his answers to shake him off, which also represents how familiar both characters are in some sense.
Definitely. Londo feels to me in this early responses very much like a man who is approached very often by people who want a favor. And he is just completely over that. And I mean, for Centauri culture, this makes a lot of sense to me. He is somebody of influence. People constantly want this, and he just has no time and patience to deal with it.
Yeah, that also fits the end. I mean, Meike already said that this promise of, no, don't worry, we are going to find you, would actually freak anyone out, I guess. Londo just smiled, because he's like, okay, so they want a favor at some point, I can give that. Like, that's just a game he's so familiar with that he also is convinced that he will get out of it alive and well.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely recognizing Mr. Morden as something more than just this random person, right? He doesn't really seem to recognize any of the higher powers that Dylan is maybe familiar with, but definitely he's part of the game. He's kind of on the same level.
Yeah, what I don't understand is that he's so positively accepting it. I mean, this promise, we will find you, is rather creepy. I mean, this is stalker material. And on the other hand, there's an voice without a body, and mysteriously the eye was saved, obviously, out of the destroyed ship. If this person can do this, what the hell would it want from me? And that would creep the hell out of me if I would be Londo, because compared to what we've seen until now, what the Centauri are able to do is far more cute compared like what the Minbari could do. And then being in this situation, no, I don't want to be there.
I think it just tells you a lot about the kinds of people that Londo usually deals with, right?
Totally. And I feel also like this contrast that we have talked about earlier, about this a soundtrack that kind of tries to tell us there's something mythical about all of this, and then we have the Centauri dealing with it like some state symbol politic deal. I guess in the last scene that also shows that everyone would be freaked out, would be kind of scared of what kind of person did I interact with, what will they want from me in the future. And he just smiles like, just expecting another deal he can deal with. I find that wonderfully awful.
It is, but then it kind of begs the question. We said the interactions between Jakar and Morden and Londo and Morden are kind of similar, mirroring each other, showing the familiarity. But Londo is the one who gets the gift in the end. So what is it that makes his answer the one where Mr. Morden kind of chooses to go along with him and not the others?
I have an idea,
Okay.
but I have a few ideas, and it's difficult how to put them down without any spoilers.
I feel like this is always your answer. I have an idea, but I can't tell you.
Yes.
It's very mean.
I feel mobbed.
Meike, don't feel too bad. Another podcast has a wonderful format where they have a bunch of newbies, and then halfway through the episode, they throw the newbies out and say, give us all the questions that you have. We are going to answer them in the segment you can't listen to. It is horrifying. So be glad that you are at least part of the conversation still.
Well, I can still tell you I know where your bed sleeps, so be nice to me.
Yes, it is. Once again, I'm also dealing with very terrifying people who have terrifying stalker abilities, I see.
Because I mean, if we look at it like with Delenn did not give them an answer at all. Like the point he wanted to get to, he did not get to with Delenn, and in Ricard, he found so much hatred. He really found the wish to wipe a whole species out, and the species that could cause this hatred in Jakar, that could cause Jakar to wish for genocide. This species is the representative of that is Londo. So that's a theory to have there. The other theory would be that Londo was, from the two people who gave him a response, Londo was the response thinking of himself. He wanted to have his empire back. He wanted to have this glorious old times back, or that of his people. But he didn't actually talk about wiping someone out. Like, he didn't murder a few other billions. He just wanted to have his kingdom back, or his empire. But on the other hand, yeah, his empire is the reason why the others want to wipe so many people out. So you could think of where on the side of this coin he actually stands, but it has, I think, I would, even without knowing anything more, I would assume it has something to do with this quality of causing this hatred.
Maybe I'm too practical there, but I would say the Lando's wish is far easier to fulfill. I mean, this jewelry, this eye, is far more easy to get and bring it to Lando and the Centauri than wiping out a whole race. So, yeah.
I mean, I really, really love the idea that the choice that Mr. Morden makes has more to do with the answers he received from the others rather than Londo. That's a really cool angle. I don't think I've heard that before. To be fair, Londo's wish goes a little bit beyond just obtaining the eye, right? But in this moment, it's the easiest thing to achieve for him. And I mean, technically, even with this rather small deed, at least that's how it feels to us, he has done quite a big thing for Lando and the Centauri, and therefore he can get the most out of it. While wiping the Centauri Republic or the entire people would be much more bigger thing to do, which would cause probably more trouble. Because I'm pretty sure, even though the Minbari are not essentially happy with the others, I doubt they would be just sitting by and watching, and another people just getting wiped out. So I think the problems or the casualties that could happen there, the uncontrollable things, are much larger with Jakar's wish than with Lando. And the point is, what is it? To get to the point, what he wants is get everything back how it was. And well, technically, this item, this jewelry, this eye, is essentially just that. It's a relic from the past that was
as a symbol of what the Centauri Republic was, what it stood for, and therefore re-establishing it in his symbolic position, again, is exactly that, what Lando wished for.
And he can use it in Centauri politics to achieve a lot of his goals, definitely. And I also kind of, now that we talk about what he gets as a gift again, it's also a bit of a cruel gift because he hands it over to him to kind of keep his hunger and his dreams and his desire for this old times going. It's like keeping the hope up, and not that Lando would start to accept that things are the way they are. So it's really kind of to keep the fire of this loving this old empire, to keep that going. I think this gives
to keep his wish alive. You could summarize it. Because otherwise it might have happened that he would say, okay, it's over, we have to start new or do something different.
And just sit in the corner and get drunk every day because it's over.
It's interesting because Lando's wish is one that it's very easy, like you described, to fulfill, but at the same time, it's never going to be really fulfilled. It's very easy to give him the eye, but at the same time, things are never going to be again like they were, because his vision of the glory days, the golden days, are kind of this ideal that never really was true, right? So it's kind of this ideal thing where it doesn't really have an end point. You always just kind of chase this dream, and giving him the eye to keep this going. Yeah, like you said, it's a cruel gift. It's very poetic in a way. And I also feel like it's the smallest possible effort on Mr. Morden's part to create the biggest possible chain reaction, because yeah, Lando is smart enough to really play this to his advantage now.
But also maybe creating a chain reaction for himself, because as you said, it's a goal that is not achievable, but you can keep him hungry with giving tidbits of what he wants, or the idea of that, like keeping his dream alive, and therefore he might have done the first step of more to follow. And using Lando for whatever it is he wants from him. Which is quite, I'm sorry, just this one. It's quite interesting. He's asking a lot of people what they want, but the actual interesting question is, what the hell does Morden want?
It's a really good question, because we always have to ask ourselves, his entire business model is, you tell me what you want, I give it to you, and now you owe me a favor. And in the situation with Lando, if we assume that Mr. Morden is really the guy that brings the eye back, we know he could blow up the raider ship, basically at will, gather this eye from the wreckage and get it back to to Lando. Somebody who can do this doesn't seem like someone who's very easy to buy Christmas presents for, right? Like, he has a whole lot of things at his disposal already. So, yeah, what can Mr. Morden want? And it feels like favors, influence, this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Also, now that we take a look at the only two people maybe who gave him an answer, because here we don't have to take a look at Delenn or at Kosh, but just compare this, and we can see that the ones where he could get with his, or if it's just an interrogation technique, or if it is something supernatural or whatever, the ones that he could actually get through to, the first person was full of hatred and wanted to kill billions of people for revenge. And the other person was completely lost in nostalgia and wanted to build up an empire that just is at another point in history at the moment, and not in its golden age anymore. So these were the two possible answers we got, and both kind of carry their own darkness, because I've always now put Jakar's answer as the bloody one there. But if you think about what it means for the Centauri to build up their empire again, that also means slavery and death for millions of people until they have that side again that they had, that kind of influence. So the both that gave him responses were in response to each other, actually, and also in response to each other in parts, but also from their own very, very dark visions. That's maybe
It definitely is. And it also, if we think of how this goes through, Londo's wish, even though it doesn't sound as bloody at first, is the one that would also make Babylon 5 impossible. You can't have a community of many small races coming together on the space station and having diplomacy if there is one giant empire around. That's just mutually exclusive. So it's definitely, he goes basically with Londo, who has a wish that is fundamentally incompatible with what this show is about. So we see a little bit of conflict there. Whereas, as tragic as it would be for the Centauri to disappear, there's nothing about Jakar's answer fundamentally that would make Babylon 5 impossible.
Yeah, well, it would just maybe exclude Narn from a few diplomatic meetings.
It would create a lot more need. It would create even more need for international courts to be finally established in this universe.
And they would have a few ambassador seats empty.
Yes.
So, do you have anything more to add to this?
I don't think so. We talked about the radar side. We talked about the Lord Kiro side. We talked about Mr. Morgan at length by this point. The final thing we maybe can talk about is Lady Ladira.
You say Lady Ladira. I was wanted to say Sinclair because, oh my gosh, he finally let someone in on his problems and talk to Garibaldi.
Yes.
Just took him ages.
He finally addresses the mystery that is chasing him around space.
He does. It's notable. He's the only one that doesn't get asked what he wants, and it would have been interesting because it's probably just. Can you tell me what the hell is happening in my own head? Why is there 24 hours I don't know about? Can I hire you as a private investigator, maybe?
Private investigator in my head. No, but Meike, what do you think about the fact that the Minbari definitely wanted him? Like, how does that add up to you up to this point?
Not at all. I mean, there has to be something they want from him. He is useful for or whatever. There is obviously a reason. At least I hope for them. Other that would be rather scary. But yeah, we have absolutely no hint of what it is. So
It's
instance. Yeah.
It's a beautiful instance of it. Answers a very important question for us. Why is the guy who always jumps into the fray heroically the commander of this station? Who in Earth Force thought that would be a good idea? And we finally learn nobody, absolutely nobody thought this would be a good idea. They just couldn't get the money to do the decision. So for tax reasons, essentially, they had to make this happen. But of course, this opens up a lot more questions. Why do the Minbari think that would be a good idea?
Yes, it's definitely something to look out for in the future.
But kudos to Garibaldi to getting this far in his investigation. Like, that is some high-profile stuff that he managed to do. So he's being a good detective.
And completely off the topic, do we see Sinclair and Garibaldi in a toilet at the end of the episode? It looks like they were washing their hands and then drying them.
It's one of the great rivalries between Star Trek and Babylon 5, and Babylon 5 prides itself to have bathrooms on board the station, which Star Trek never manages to do. So yes, I think I don't know if it's in this scene, but we see that there's special toilets for methane breathers. So that it's high-end technology on this station.
I'm sorry, I just have to say, I really loved this scene because it was like, wait, is that a toilet? Oh my gosh, they have toilets there.
But it also...
The kind of conversation that they wanted to have in a place where no one would buy on them.
Yeah, on the other hand, I wouldn't have private conversations on a toilet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it can have both sides now that I think about it. But yeah, it's a cool detail.
I mean, for me, it's also kind of this bookend to the episode. We start out with a very mundane effect of Ivanova waking up and just, you are on a spinning space station and you kind of just work there. And I feel like this is, at the end here, the same place. Like, when does Sinclair have time to worry about his own, like, past and mystery? Basically never. He has a station to run. He has all these other problems. There's just a radar attack on Babylon 5. So when does he get to talk with his security chief? When they're on the loo. That's basically the only free time they have. So they do it then. And it's kind of this bookend of all of these cool things that we want to serve with this story. We kind of have to like push to the side and to the periphery because there's just too many more important things to worry about.
There's one more scene I would like to appreciate now that we're at it, because one that I absolutely love is also right at the beginning, the conversation that Londo and Jakar have while they are waiting for the transport, for the trampoline in the Jakar world. And I had to watch it twice. I had to skip back to the beginning because I was getting food. And the second time I watched it, I only looked at the poor civilian standing right in this point. And it's like, oh shit, two ambassadors discussing of who wants to wipe out who, and I'm stuck between them. Oh no. That was great.
And I mean, he keeps staying there at this, exactly between those two. He's not going a step back or a step to the front. No, he is sandwiched between them and just, oh my God, please, open elevator, please. And then when he gets his chance, then he's off. Oh.
It's one of these moments, and Babylon 5 has a lot of them, where the extras that don't get a speaking role, that are just usually in the background, get moments to really shine. And this guy that played a random human civilian who has no name, no voice lines, managed to speak volumes through his, like, just every body language that he had of being the most uncomfortable person in the universe at that point.
Yeah, that was absolutely great.
I mean, not everyone would be a freak like us and sitting there with popcorn. Tell me more. Oh, wait, actually, I can do this. No.
Yeah, we will probably just follow them into the elevator to see the bickering continue.
Or with a recording device or pencil and paper. Keep talking. I have my next thing for my entertainment evening.
But it's also this kind of almost tragic moment where we talked about all the serious, implications of what these both people are wishing for, and the, space political implications of what they are saying to Mr. Morden and stuff. But at the same time, you see them in front of the elevator, and if these two weren't two ambassadors with like really a lot of power at their hands, that would be quite cute, and it could be like a quite playful friendship at the end of the day at some point. But unfortunately, both of them,
you totally see that they have such a matching energy.
Yeah.
But the end is so matching, and so that also, I kind of felt like this was really like the most unnecessary conversation they ever had. Like, ambassadors would literally not discuss anything like that. You really just, they are stuck in there because their energies match so well, and sadly they were born in positions where they hate each other to the very core. That was very, very nice portrayed there.
yes.
Yeah, well, I had at this moment I had to think of the series MASH, where the protagonist, I'm not sure how many watched this series. It's about...
It's a great staple of television, so people should be familiar.
Okay. I don't know, but some things are... It's like Takeshi's Castle, who is loved in Germany, but if you would ask a Japanese person, it's like, what? So yeah, I really liked there was this moment with the protagonist saying, yeah, let's why can't we just invite the people from North and South and give a big drinking party, and the last one standing is the winner. And this is one of the moments I really felt this, because yeah, that would be a nice solution for all the problems there.
Especially because we've seen the two drink together, right? In a bar, admiring the dancer. So it would work. At least for these two, it would work.
Though I have to admit, in there, I read a really interesting thing today, that there is a programmer who is trying to develop, like online or a digital war frame. So his dream would be to bring the wars from the physical world to just the digital world, like playing an online game instead of actually destroying and killing people. And I mean, this is so utopian, but I really like this idea because in the end, that's how a problem should get solved, with no one getting actually hurt and nothing getting destroyed. I mean, it's utopian, but I really like this idea.
That's an entire Star Trek episode right there from the original series that we can discuss, but that would have to be a special outside of this. Okay, in this case, our usual letter segment, because as usual we want to talk about the tapestry of Babylon 5 a little bit, the things that make this show so special and weave it all together, because we are still very much in this era of Babylon 5 where it is a 90s show, it is individual stories week by week, but at the same time, there is a through line through all of this, and we already touched on a lot of these things, so maybe let's just quickly recap the things that we've already picked up and the things that we expect might come up in the future from this episode. We already talked about the fact that Sinclair's mystery finally gets addressed. The entire dynamic between London and Shikar gets examined again. We even talked a little bit about how the Raiders might be an indicator for the Earth politics that are going on back home. So all of the big through lines that we have up to this point come through, but looking into the future, given that this is the episode that the season is named after, what do we think might be the impact of all of this?
I mean, the most important part, which we actually didn't talk about, I think, Layla, you were trying to talk about it, was with the lady, what was her name again? Ladira. And her prophecy, because at the end of the episode, her vision is still there, as she phrases it, of Babylon 5 getting destroyed, and Sinclair even gets to see it like while she's sharing it, like, I don't know, some Vulcanian,
like a mind meld.
Yeah, exactly. So the threat, the Damocles sword, is still hanging above Babylon 5, even more shaped than before.
I have a suspicion why we didn't talk about this. At least for me, this is always the case. This isn't news. In this first season alone, there have been at least 2 instances where alien fleets were gathering around Babylon 5 wanting to destroy it. I feel like Sinclair is sitting there, or should sit there and say, okay, in the future this station might get blown up in a horrible accident or war. Yeah, that's kind of what I signed up for. What else is new?
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's just another Monday. It's so regular that there's some chaos, or the station is being threatened. Though I think this time it gets a bit more of importance, because we know it will come, because we already got the verification that the seer actually can do shit. But it's at the same time, it's so vague, so mysterious, so unpronounced what exactly is going to happen.
But are we even sure? I mean, Alex, we have already been introduced to the fact of what happened to the previous stations, right?
Absolutely. Well, not in every detail, but yeah.
Not in every detail, but are we even sure that we are seeing Babylon 5 here? Like, is there a specific feature that everyone says, oh, it's Babylon 5 and not 3, 4, or whatever?
At least when Sinclair gets the vision, he would know this, because all Babylon stations have very unique outlines. They are all all Babylon 5 all Babylon stations follow the same general idea, but they were built differently. This is a nice rule in that you mention it, because one of the reasons they are different is this last Babylon station was halfway financed by the Minbari, and they were very cheapskatish. So all the Babylon stations before Babylon 5 were actually supposed to be bigger, better defended, better equipped. It's just they ran out of funding. This is why Babylon 5 is relatively small, even though it's still like a very big place.
Because that was something that I was not sure about at that point. That what I have to say at this point again, I mean, our listeners will already probably be aware of it. That is that I have a theory about the option of foretelling or of looking into the future specifically for how the Babylon 5 universe works, which is one that I cannot share yet, Meike, but we will get back to this and I will share it with you and we will discuss it in every detail and it will take a long time, I guess. And Alex, have we ever posted that question? Because what I'm referring to is our special discussion for the road home, when also this theory could be discussed. I wouldn't say it is confirmed in it, but it could be discussed. Have we ever posted it as a question for our viewers?
We will have to double check, but I suspect no.
Yes, because I have a theory on how it could actually, in universe, be very well up to even scientifically be explained why looking into the future in this universe is absolutely possible and a fact, and that's interesting that here it is hinted at it, but it's up for discussion. I'm not saying I'm perfectly right on that or that it's ever stated 100% that it works like this.
Yeah, a lot of discussion that Meike is not yet privy to, but will be in the future. But she can't, unlike the Centauri, can't get hints of that and no confirmation. So unfortunately, you just have to trust us.
I just wait for the episode or for the point where you can say, okay, now I come up with all of my theories, all the things we just barely mentioned, and I'm just sitting here, okay, come on, tell me, talk to me.
The good news is there are going to be a few of these, like episodes where we sit here very tense, get your first impression, and we finally, and here's like 12 things that we've collected that we can now properly address. The bad news is most of the time that just opens even more questions for you. So up until the very end, I think there will always be things that we will be nagging you about.
That's a good story.
I hope it will be. But okay, we have the destruction of Babylon 5, of course. I already really enjoy that we already had the question, will Mr. Morden come back? Who knows? So far, Babylon 5 doesn't really have the biggest habit of bringing back these villains of the week or these people of the week, but through lines keep returning, so maybe this is something. Maybe in half a year, Garibaldi will once again talk to Sinclair on the toilet and be like, oh, by the way, I finished the investigation in this Morden guy that you told me, and I found out he was actually an alien or something like that.
Well, maybe we should just open up the reappearance that it's just through connections, not necessarily the characters themselves, which is more likely to happen than one specific character.
Then there is only one last question I would pose for the tapestry. I think we all are in agreement and accept that whoever Mr. Morden represents will find Londor again, like they said, and there will be a price for what he was gifted here. Any speculations what that price might be?
On my part, I have absolutely no idea because I really can't imagine what it would be such a powerful being would want from someone so normal like Lando. I mean, of course, we could put it down to something like connected to his position of influence and stuff like that. Though I really, on one hand, I would find this rather boring because it would be the most obvious thing you would want from an ambassador. So maybe it's something more personal that would be interesting. And on the other hand, something completely freaked up, crazy stuff.
I think, Layla, you can't really give an answer to this without spoilers, right?
Oh, no, this is great because I don't know what you are hinting at here.
Oh, perfect.
I don't remember from the future what this price was exactly. So that's great because I also have no clue at the moment. No, but what I can actually, what I would, the direction I would think of now, without knowing exactly what's next, would be that I don't think a creature so divine could really ask for anything back, but would maybe really like want to play with this side that they triggered inside Londo and Jakar a bit more and would get satisfaction.
I mean, that's a very interesting perspective, that it's not really a transaction in the sense of gaining something. It's more like fun.
Yeah.
All right. I think unless there's any point that either of you wants to still continue with, we can go into our outro. And as usual, we pose a little outro question, which we are also going to post later on Twitter and other socials. And for this episode, it's going to be one that came up in our discussion. Was Jakar 100% serious with his wish, or was it more an impulsive sort of desire that he was talking about when he answered Mr. Morden? I think both cases can be made. Maybe it will lead to some interesting discussions, and those will keep us busy until next week's episode, when we are going to talk about TKO.
If you like this episode, give us a like and subscribe, or even share it with anyone you think might be interested. You can find us on Twitter. Still, I'm working in theory on a Mastodon account. It will come at some point. Or on Instagram and on Facebook, where we also have our own group. We are the Third Age Podcast, without the just Third Age Podcast everywhere. You can, of course, also find us everywhere you can find podcasts. But, of course, here on YouTube, we are the cutest because we see.